Gregory is a graduate of the University of Athens, where he completed his Bachelor of Arts in History and Research Masters in History from Leiden University. He is a leader in Greek genealogy and family history. Gregory's interest in family history began at the age of 16 in 2011. Since then, he has participated in all major Greek genealogy initiatives. Between 2016 and 2019, Gregory served as MyHeritage's Greek projects manager. And in 2020, he founded his own business, Greek Ancestry, which is based in Patras, Greece. Now, Greek Ancestry's goal is twofold. On the one hand, it makes Greek archival collections accessible and searchable online and significantly reduces the time and cost of research. And on the other hand, Greek Ancestry aspires to build a culture around Greek family history and genealogy by setting high research standards and creating a concrete educational basis for anyone interested in the field. Just a reminder that for the duration of the lecture, participants' cameras will be switched off and their audio muted so that Gregory isn't accidentally interrupted and to avoid lag. If this hasn't happened automatically when joining the lecture, could everybody please turn off their cameras and mute their microphones manually? Also, for anybody who might have any questions, please hold them until the end of the webinar, when you might type them in the chat function, which may be found below or on the right of your screen, and then I will read them out. Depending on time, Gregory will be able to answer some. I'd like to now welcome Gregory to begin his lecture.
Hello, everyone. Let me turn this on. Hello, I'm Gregory, and first of all, I'd like to thank the Pallaconian Brotherhood for organizing this, and especially Miltiadis, who actually found me and invited me here. And I don't know if you guys know this, but perhaps this is the first time something like this is being organized for Greek Australians. So far, all the focus has been on Greek Americans, so you are making a difference today. So I'm here to talk about Laconian Ancestry, but it's a huge topic. So imagine that about 2 months ago, we did a series of 7 webinars, and they were not enough. We should have done more. So obviously the hour we have ahead of us is not going to be enough. So instead of going into details and stuff, I decided to tell you more about my story as a family history researcher, hoping that my story will help you with your research and perhaps, hopefully, inspire you. So as Miltiadis said, I started my research when I was 16. And it's pretty interesting, and I'm really glad because I'm giving this presentation today, because in fact it was 2 Greek Australians who were the inspiration for me to start all this. Dimitris Katsabis and Stelios Chagias. They are from Karitsa in Laconia, close to my village, and they live in Adelaide. So when I started my research, I started asking relatives for some stories, collected some photos, searching online, and one day I came across this amazing website, the Family Trees of Southern Pyrenees. So this is a website created by Dimitris Katsabis and Stelios Chagias in 2002, and it's pretty amazing because, as you can see, it currently hosts over 45,000 names. Here you can see a list of last names sorted alphabetically, so you can find your family's surname and just open a new tab and see all the names registered, all the people registered under this surname. For example, this is part of my own family tree, and as you can see, it's pretty impressive in the sense that we have managed to find information about people who lived about 200 years ago and more. We know exactly, when they were born, died, married. We have names for males and females, which is not obvious. And also, there is what's great about this website, the Family Trees of Southern Pardon, is that you will not only find family trees, some of which go back to the 18th century, but you will also find some photos, family documents, stories. Here at the top, you can see my great-great-great-grandfather's signature. And in this little box on the side, there is more information, about this individual. Now, Family Trees of Southern Pardon works on a volunteer basis by people just driven by their passion, for Patrida and the families. But it's also very professional. So all the information that you will find on this website is based on some kind of sources. Nothing is random, So it's either oral history or documentation, but it's a very reliable source of information, this website. Now, right after I got into the Family Trees of Southern Pardon team, and through my work with them, I met a woman living close to Washington, D.C. in the States. Her name is Carol Kostakos Petranek, and her family is from Iosionis in Sparta, right out of Sparta. Well, another Sparta in the story. So Carol was very familiar with international genealogy research. She knew a lot about databases and websites and companies and all of that. And since the 1970s or 1980s, she had been trying to do something with Greek records. So Carol and I were talking about the dearth of Greek records available and searchable online. And one day we drove down to Sparta and we visited the metropolis, the offices of the metropolis. So we were literally astonished by what we saw there. We saw 26 marriage books, indexes of marriages, and some innumerable boxes full of paper, marriage papers. So we said, we definitely need to do something about these records. So we talked to this priest you see right in the middle hugging Carol, Father Seraphim. We said, Father Seraphim, is there a way, these records can be preserved? Would you like someone to come in here and digitize the records? And he said, yeah, that would be great if you can do it, if you can find the resources and everything, that would be great. The bishop would love to have his archive preserved and digitized. So the question then was, who would organize and fund such a project? And long story short, Carol reached out to MyHeritage. For those of you who don't know, MyHeritage is a very, very big genealogy company based in Israel, but they have records from all over the world, billions of records. So MyHeritage's CEO, Gilad Jafet, he expressed enthusiasm and huge interest in Greek records, and he gave us all the support we needed. So he gave us the equipment, cameras and stuff, and he also funded an indexing team, and we started working. So Carol spent 2 summers at the metropolis in Sparta digitizing the marriage records, and last summer she was there to digitize all the village books. So all the village books from the entire, from the jurisdiction of the metropolis of Sparta and Monemvasia. Carol digitized last summer about 150 parishes. Here are some photos. Carol and me setting up equipment, sitting there with the records. So let me tell you real quick what this collection of the metropolis is. So the metropolis has this collection of marriage records. Every time someone wanted to get married, they needed to get a permission by the bishop. So the local priest would write a letter to the bishop asking for his permission, and the bishop would get back to the priest, most times saying, yes, go ahead with this marriage, it is fine. Their concern was for the couple to not be closely related, okay? So there are two types of records. On the one hand, we have the index books where all the licenses were registered, and on the other hand, we have the original licenses, the actual certificates. You can find all these on MyHeritage. You can search either through the generic search engine or through this special search engine for Spartan marriages. You can search by first name, surname, village, whatever, in Greek and English. And also they have a great algorithm with spellings and stuff. So even if you misspell a surname, you'll be fine. So when you find a record, you will be given not only the index book entry, but also all the documentation pertaining to the specific marriage. Now, all this extra documentation, it really varies because records were not preserved in the same way. The archives were moved multiple times, especially during World War II. So many of the records have not been preserved. But for the great majority of the marriages registered, there will be additional documentation. Now, you can find the original priest's letter to the bishop. You can find the bishop's letter back to the priest, the license. But we have also seen all sorts of stuff. We've seen photos of people. We've seen certificates by the mayors, confirming that this man was born in our village. We have also seen contracts, dowry contracts, briques, and all that is available on MyHeritage. Now, here you can see two photos, these two types of records. So on the left, there is an index book, and actually this is one of the very old ones. Each line, each group of boxes corresponds to one marriage, and you can get like the name of the groom, the bride, the best man, if this was their first marriage or not, the priest, the witnesses, guarantors, everything. But here's what happens. MyHeritage indexed only these index books. We did link the index books to the licenses, but the licenses are not translated or transliterated. So you cannot search through the licenses, and you cannot, in this way, easily find all the great information the licenses include. So these licenses and the rest of the documents may include information the index books does not have. The age of the groom and the bride, the index doesn't have that, the license does. Or names of other relatives and family members. For example, if the bride's father was dead, her mother would sign the papers. And that's very, very helpful for the family historian, because this is not something, mother's name is not something they could find easily through other types of records. Or, for example, you may find something like Gregory Kontos, uncle of the bride, Pavlos Kontos, cousin of the bride. So in some cases, you can reconstruct a considerable part of the family tree relied only on these license documents. Imagine that in some cases we've also seen like little family trees drawn by the priests themselves, because the priests wanted to show that the groom and the bride are not closely related. So they would build their trees to show that. So the thing is, now that these license documents are not translated, how are you going to translate them? How are you going to know, what type of record this is? Is it the license or is it the priest letter? Is it a certificate or is it a contract? And then what happens with the spellings? What if you find a different spelling to what you knew so far? Or can you find more records like this? Or how reliable is a record like this one? What if there is conflicting information with other types of records? Which one should you trust more? So, I was thinking about all these questions people would have when these records would finally be released. So for this reason, I founded my own genealogy business in January. So Greek Ancestry is a genealogy business based in Patras in Greece. And as Miltiades said in the introduction, we have two goals. So yes, on the one hand, we definitely want to make more records, more Greek records available to people, easily accessible, searchable, for a low cost, easily, fast, all that matters. And like now we host over 350,000 records on our website for all over Greece. And we add new areas and records on the first of each month. And we have, we're running many new digitization projects, and we help with private research and with all documents like the marriage licenses of Sparta I showed you before. But at the same time, we are really determined to build this culture around the field, to help people by giving them all the tips they need, all the knowledge they need to advance or start their family history research. So between May and July, I think, or June, I don't remember, we did a series of 7 webinars, which were free. We write articles all the time. We offer free genealogy consultation through Skype. So doing all that, we're trying to set some standards in the field to standardize spellings and stuff, terminology, to educate people, for example, how they can cite their sources and why they need to do so, all kinds of stuff. And in June, we also started a new platform, Yaya and Me. Our goal with that is to help the diasporans, but especially the youth, connect with the Greek heritage, but not, simply by conventional, traditional genealogy research, not just by building a family tree, because perhaps not everyone is interested in doing that, but by giving them stories about their village, by helping them relate to other people's stories, by helping them connect with others, by helping them inscribe their own family history within larger historical contexts. So we write posts, and we have an Instagram account for Yaya and Me, and we try to promote this idea of reconnecting with your roots through a new way, not just genealogy, but more historical and cultural manner. So here's the website. On the left at the top, you can see our homepage. There is an education tab where you will find all this that I was talking about all this time. And then to the right is the search button. So if you click on search, you will get a list of all the areas for which we have records. They are sorted by alphabetical order, so it's very easy for you to find Laconia, of course, because Laconia is what you're interested in. So you will click on Go under Laconia, and you will get this new page, search page. Here is the search engine. You can search by surname or village in both Greek and English. Our algorithms are not as advanced as MyHeritage, so you will need to be careful with spellings, but we have a free tool. You can just fill out a form for free, and we will give you the correct spelling of the names you need. So you can just type a surname. I searched for Paikopoulos, who is our host today. So here are some records for the Paikopoulos family from Agoriani, Sparta, from the 1930s. And there are many more. So you just need to scroll down a bit. Now, using this record ID, you can then place an order in order to receive the original record, like the image, and translation, a full source citation, and of course, more information than what's available on the website. So on the website is like, the records you find on the website are like our menu, okay? It's just a list of what we have. There is much more information about all these people. Now, what do we have from Laconia? So our Laconian collection is pretty extensive. We have at least 5 big collections. I will talk to you about the 3 of them. So first of all, we have the voter lists, which span from the 1840s to the 1880s. We have over 18,000 records for those, and they are very, very important because they cover the information they include covers most of the 19th century, and they can help you get back to the revolution times and the early 19th century. These voter lists are, some of them are handwritten, others are typed. They're all available on the website, very easy, to find. And then we just released on August 1st, we released this new collection, the Parish voter lists, covering the period from 1912 to 1935 and even later in some cases, over 36,000 records. That's for Laconian standards, that's really, really phenomenal, because I think that now there are no chances that you will not find your family in our databases. Everybody should be in there. And what's really interesting about this collection is that it is the ideal link between what we know, about our papudes and yayades today and the 19th century records. So using this collection, you will be able to fill the gap between the 1880s and the 1920s. So everybody born within that time frame should be found in these records, in this parish voter list, or their parents will. Now, what are these parish voter lists? Every time a village needed a new priest, they had to find one and elect him. So every time an election would take place, a voter list of all people eligible to vote would be created. So this way, we have lists for the parishioners of the villages, men and sometimes women. I'll talk about this later. And in some cases, in fact, you can find more than one parish voter list for one village. So for example, you can find a parish voter list for 1912, and then another one for 1920, 30, and 35, which is great and very helpful because it helps you see the development of a family, throughout the decades. But although these 2 collections are impressive magnitude-wise, I think that the most interesting one is the one I've put at the top of my list here, the captives list. When Ibrahim Pasha invaded the Peloponnese in 1825, he burned many of our villages and massacred, and of course he took many captives, men and women, primarily women and children. So we have found lists of those captives. When Governor Kapodistrias, came to Greece and took responsibility, he expressed a very systematic interest in recording all those captives and finding them, in releasing them. You know, some of them were bought back. Others just ended up in the slave markets of the Middle East. So we have these lists and we have indexed them and translated them. We have found over 500 people from Laconia, from many of the villages. My family had many captives, and Yeraki and the surrounding villages had many. Also the villages down towards Molai, all those villages had many losses. What's also interesting about this list is that they do not only give you the captive's name and surname, but they can also give you his or her age, where they were held in 1828. Like it can say, the record can say like they are still in Egypt, or they are in Libya. And in some cases, you can also find out who owned the captives, the slaves. So this collection is really, really interesting, and I think it is very relevant as we approach the 200 years from the revolution. Some more stuff about the parish photo lists. So they cover about 100 villages, and the information they include is very helpful. You can see an example of such a document on the right. You get the surname, the first name, the father's name, the age. In some cases, you also get the occupation. But to me, what's most interesting is all those side notes, the little notes here on the right. I don't know if you can see them. So for some of the people, it says like, he is in America, right? So this person, this voter has migrated to the States, and the other one has migrated to the States, and the other one's in the States, and the other one's a soldier. So these side notes can help you tremendously with your research in finding out, which members of the family had already migrated, which were still there in the village. So that's very helpful and interesting. And also, in many cases, you can find women in these records. So if the father of a family had passed, his widow would take his place as a voter. She would vote for the new priest. And for example, if there was an unmarried orphan girl, an adult woman, she would also be given a vote. So these records reveal things that other sources cannot reveal. Now, it is very interesting. If I was giving this presentation a year ago, I would have started by talking to you about the General State Archives of Laconia, the GAC, based in Sparta. I would tell you, you need to go there, you need to contact them to find everything and stuff. And it's really interesting how much we've managed to do and change in 2020. Perhaps 2020 is a very good year for Greek genealogy and not for anything else. But yeah, lots of things changed in 2020 in these 8 months. But of course, we cannot digitize everything. We do not have access to everything, and the archives are still there, of course. Here's their website, and I've also included their email address in case you want to contact them. So they have things we don't have. They have Mitro Arenon, mail registers, Timotologia, municipal registers. They also have school records, which are pretty amazing because they are not just list of all the students with their names and stuff, but also they will give you the grades your ancestors took in each of their classes at school and throughout the year. So you can also see how good students they were, their progress. And in some cases, you can even find side notes saying, for example, this student did not attend school because he was working at the fields with his family. Or this student was an orphan, things like that, which are very interesting. Also, in school records, you can find women. Women will not be found in the male registers, right? They might be missing from municipal registers, especially if they had migrated, but they are definitely in the school records. And then the GAC, the archives at Sparta, they also have notarial records, contracts. And these are another treasure of information, because it's not just about, sales and purchases. You can also find wills. You can find dowries, priques. So we're talking about amazing information available in those records. And imagine that I was in Sparta about 2 months ago, and I was talking to this friend of mine, and he was telling me that he found a contract of his family back from the 1850s, and there was some dispute about some land or stuff, and his ancestor wanted to prove, that the land belonged to him. So he started narrating his whole family history in that contract in order to prove his case. And so my friend found the contract and found his whole family history, where the family came from, when, what was her previous name, why they changed it, everything in one single document from the 1850s. So the GAC really have treasures. You definitely need to contact them. And they also publish a lot. They have published many books, which are very helpful. They have transcribed old contracts, and they have made indexes of names. So they are very helpful, and they're available for free. You just need to go to Sparta to get them. And also what I want to bring up about these is you should not underestimate any of these sources. Ideally, you want a family tree and a family history built on as many different types of records as possible. And it's not just about, the extra information each type of record gives you, but also it is because of the ability you will have to confirm the information. So there might be conflicting information between different types of records, but the more information you have, the more records you have, you will be able to cross-check. So you will definitely need to go on MyHeritage and get all the marriage records for your families, and then, visit my website and get the voter lists, or see if you have any captives in the family. And then you also need to contact the archives in Sparta. They are very friendly, very helpful. They reply to emails, even in English, and they would give you, whatever you ask for free. So they are amazing. So you need to work in all these different directions in order to achieve a very good result. And there's even more. So for those of you who are into social media, there are many Facebook groups, genealogy groups, but the most impressive of them all is the Hellenic Genealogy Geek by Georgia Stryker-Kilman. Georgia's family is from Agios in Sparta and Agios Theologos. So one more Sparta in the story. And she has this blog and a Facebook group. The Facebook group currently has over 27,000 members, most of which are active, and that's impressive. It's the only, group community which has such like an audience, but most importantly, these groups are ideal if you want your questions answered. So many people will be very willing and glad to answer questions and help you for free. There are resources, being shared, articles. You will make new connections. You will find people from your own village and exchange information. There are, photos, family photos published. So you definitely need to check this out. And I guess this is pretty much what I want to bring up. Here, is a special discount coupon we issued just for this presentation today. So if you go to the website and you find on Greek Ancestry, if you find something of interest, a record for your family, you can have it ordered and you will use this coupon Leonidas and get the discount. But it's due Sunday, so Sunday is the expiration day. Okay, so I think this is it. Σας ευχαριστώ πολύ. Thank you. I will turn this to Miltiadis. And there is also time for questions, I think.
Wow. Thank you so much, Gregory. That was such an impressive lecture. And it was so completely thorough. I wouldn't be surprised if not too many people have many questions left unanswered. I think that was how thorough it was. And like Gregory said, today we began a partnership that hopefully sparks new interest among Greek Australian organisations in helping their members connect to their ancestry in the homeland. Thank you, Gregory, for taking the time and the effort to prepare this webinar. And thank you again, Ευχαριστώ, for sharing your knowledge with all of us tonight. And thank you again for the coupon. That's very special. And I know you didn't have to do that, but thank you for that.
And the Paikopoulos records.
And the Paikopoulos records, of course. I know. Well, actually, my many cousins and family members will be tuning in as well. So they'll all be grateful for that as well. All Paikopoulos. I'd like to now open up the lecture to questions. If anybody has any questions, don't forget to put them in the chat on the chat bar on the right, or to ask them on Facebook Live. All right, so we have some questions. We have a question from Olympia. Oh no, we have a question from Nico. Hello, Grigori, thank you for such an amazing lecture. Have you ever considered coming to Australia to present an in-person lecture to Greek Australians?
We were talking about this with Miltiadis, and we said that at some point the Pallaconian Brotherhood should invite me over to give a presentation. I'd be glad to.
I agree completely. I think Palakoniki will be writing up a formal invitation very soon and sending it off to Patra for sure. I have a question actually as well. In your research so far, Gregory, I know that it's probably common sense that Laconia has not been the easiest place to database and archive. Out of the rest of Greece, though, I've noticed that your database is growing and you're covering many other regions in Greece. So far, which region has been the easiest to database?
I'll tell you what. So it really depends on the types of records we're working on. To be honest, Laconia, we put most of our effort in Laconia, in Arcadia. So the areas where most migrants left from. So Laconia was not easy, but it is the one which is the most covered one, okay? And then follows Arcadia. We have a pretty extensive database for Thessaloniki because we have a very big voter list, like 40,000 names from there. Chania also. 60,000 names. So I would say that we focused more on the areas which had more migrants. So these are the most well covered. I can tell you which are the hardest. The hardest areas are those which do not have preserved the archive systematically. So some islands. The Dodecanese, for example, are really hard. They were under Italian occupation until the 1940s. Epirus is hard. Macedonia is hard. All those areas which became part of Greece in the 1910s tense. So it's really a combination of historical factors, a lack of archival mentality. Yeah.
We have another question here. That was an excellent answer, Gregory. So we have another question from Rosemary. Hi, Grigori. Do you know the date of the earliest record you have researched?
The earliest record I've researched. Oh boy. I guess it would be something from the late 18th century. The earliest record on the website perhaps is a mail register entry from Kabos in Crete, in Chania, from 1817.
That's very early. That's to
it
have
is
that
early.
That's very
It
early.
is early, yeah.
We have another question. Unfortunately, no name, but her mother is from Molaus. Will I find records for this town?
I think we do have records for Molai on our website, but if we don't, there will definitely be marriage records for her family on MyHeritage, and then she will also contact the archives in Sparta.
I hope that answers her question. I think it does. Another question, Gregory, from Parish Stavrianakos. Would these records suggest that many families from modern Sparti have been in the area from since the revolution?
I would say that most families have been in the area since the revolution. There was great mobility before the revolution and during it. In fact, the 1840, the voter list from the 1840s also include information on whether the family, the voter, is a native or not. And in many cases, you see, like they say, he came here in 1825, or he has many years here, or things like that. So there are ways to actually find out if a family is native or not. And it's also useful to take into account the size of a family. So a very small family could indicate migration from somewhere else.
I agree. I think that's common sense as well. Another question, Gregory, from Angie Rice. What sort of impact does the occupation and civil war have on the accuracy and completeness of the records? And have you found differences in researching records relating to male versus females?
So to answer the latter first, so records for females are harder to find. I had written an article about this, and you can read it on Greek Ancestry. The reason is females were not important for the bureaucracy. Men voted, men paid the taxes, so men served the military, so women were just left on the side and records were not really kept for them. You can also see that in marriage records that they also always say, Constantina, daughter of. For the males, it's always, just your name, Miltiades Paikopoulos, right? Not Miltiades son of. So you see this gender dimension. But there are records for women, as I said, the school records, notarial records, the marriages, the municipal registers, the demotologia are also helpful. And there are also for Sparta, and perhaps Sparta is one of the very few cities and municipalities which have this type of record, female registers. These are very rare. The Spartan ones start, I think, around 1835 or something for females. They're very helpful, but they're not for the entire Laconia, just for the municipality of Sparta. Now, regarding occupation stuff, yes, many records were destroyed during wars and all of that. The archives of the metropolis of Sparta were moved multiple times during the war. I think they were taken to monasteries at some point, to be preserved. But also, we definitely need to point this out. We should not blame just the war that we don't have good records, because records are being lost even today. that there's no war. I've heard stories you cannot imagine about how records are even stolen. So we have to be very determined to preserve the records.
100%.
In fact, I'm thinking to go to Sparta next year with Carol and make like a donation to the metropolis, give them archival folders and everything, and we will work there for a month, I guess, to preserve the collections archivally.
Well, that'd be very generous of you.
It's needed. It's needed.
But also, you are very generous. I remember on your website recently, you actually donated your archives, I believe, to was it the Eftihia Foundation or was it the Eftihia Foundation? Yeah, that was project. That was very generous as well. Another question, this time from Litza. Let me just read this out. Too many questions. So many questions now. Actually, I'll just read out one from Ilias. What are your current projects and focus areas at GreekAncestry.net?
I can't say that. We were working on a very big city directories project, which is this is going to be the first time this type of record will be used extensively in Greek genealogy research. We are adding new areas. You will see new stuff coming up soon. And let me see. We might do a project with government gazettes, which is also going to be interesting. So there is more to come, but I cannot reveal everything.
Fair enough. I think discretion is important. Now for Litza's question, I've got it up. Is it possible for this to contribute to our family's tree, that is from migration to Australia to the current date?
So if I understand this question correctly, Litza means if she can find records for her family since migration to current date. That depends on the records preserved and available in Australia. If she's referring to the Family Trees of Southern Parnan website, and if she implies that she wants to add information for her family on there, that's very easy. Just contact Stelios, Dimitri. There's also a Facebook page. It's interesting because it's easier to trace family in Greece in the 19th century than today, because records of the 20th century are not available. It does not really make sense because, anyway, personal data and all of that laws are a bit not very well thought. But yeah, it's not really easy to find information for, let's say after 1950s onwards.
Now for another Pekopoulos, Theodoros. Hi, Gregory. Apart from people using these records for family trees, have you come across people using these records for other purposes?
I guess Theodore already has an answer to this. There are many people who need these records for citizenship. They want to prove, that the grandparents or great-grandparents were born in Greece, so they are looking for records. And I would say that this is it, pretty much. In the past, there could have been, an effort of people to reclaim property in Greece. But today, I think it's more about family history interest and citizenship.
Another question now from George. Do you have any records from Arna or Paleovrisi?
I think so, yeah. If you just go to the website under search Laconia, type Arna and Paleovrisi. Paleovrisi should be spelled like this. and you will find records.
Perfect. I know that a lot of people will be finding this very helpful for their own research. The last question, I think, so far, Gina. Hi, Gregory. Thank you very much for this. Are there records of marriages, deaths, baptisms from the 1800s or earlier? And I think you've already answered that a bit, but...
So the marriage records of the metropolis of Sparta, the earliest records from 1835. There are no records for before that. The birth records of the churches, we digitize those as well, but they are not available online yet. These start later. Hierarchy and Mistras, I think they have the oldest records. Those of Hierarchy begin in 1859, and Mistras something like that as well, but not for earlier. For most villages, you can expect to find records for after the 1880s, 1890s. The majority, unfortunately, 1910s.
Well, that's very relevant considering yesterday's lecture was on Mr. So
Right.
There's a connection there as well. Another question from Rosemary. During the Ottoman occupation, were any records kept in Turkey?
Yes, they were. Censuses and tax registers were kept. The thing is, these are not available online. Some of them are circulating online, but it's not very clear what's the source and all of that. So I would not necessarily encourage someone to look for those. And there are also other issues like many of those records do not have, they might include, a name, my name, Gregory Kontos, but not my father's name, not my age. So they are helpful more for historical purposes that rather than purely genealogical. You cannot rely on these records to build a family tree back to the 15th century.
I think that's it so far. I can't see any more questions. In that case, I'd like to thank you again, Gregory.
Thank you.
It's almost 7 p.m. It's an amazing opportunity that we've all had here to listen to you and to get some exposure to your website. Just to reiterate that Gregory's website, his Facebook page, and all the other information will be posted online on our page, and we'll be sharing that. One last question, I think we can fit it in before we finish up. Let's just get that up there. Gregory, when did surnames come into vogue in Laconia? And that's from Dimitri Katsambis, your friend.
Right, Dimitri Katsambis. Hey, Dimitri. So I think it seems that we have seen surnames in the late 18th century. It definitely depends on the area, the village, and all of that. But I would say that in general, the rule is that surnames started being used after the revolution when they were needed to the bureaucracy. People needed a surname, so you can see it. For example, if you see early marriage records, the same surname has 3 different versions. So I was translating a document the other day, and it was Manousakis, Manousopoulos, and Manousos. So for the same family, 3 different versions of the surname, which means that the surname had not been standardized, which means that a generation before it could also not be there at all. And also you see people using 2 surnames. So for example, let's say Kanelis or Kodakos. That shows there was, surnames were very, fluid and not systematically used.
Another excellent answer. Thank you so much, Gregory. I know that you've probably got a lot of interest out of this, and I think there'll be a lot of Greek Australians who will be flocking to your website now. So I'll be winding up the Zoom lecture now. Thank you to everyone for attending, and just another alert that we've got another lecture on the history of Thermopylae itself on the 25th of August, and a lecture on the 10th of September by a young Greek archaeologist who is digging at Amyclis in Sparti. So I recommend that everybody tag along to those, and thank you so much, Gregory, for tonight's lecture.
Thank you. Thank you.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you so much for coming.